Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Impact Career Series from the Marshall Institute here at the London School of Economics. My name is Carlos Miranda. I'm an entrepreneur, business owner, and lucky to be a practitioner in residence at the Marshall Institute. I also happen to be your host. So if you're new to the show, the Impact Career Series features conversations with professionals who have built purpose-driven careers. We explore their journeys, the challenges they faced, the highlights they've celebrated, and the advice they've gained along the way. So whether you're starting to explore a social impact work, a career in social impact work, or you're already in the field, it's our aim and our hope that these little conversations offer you some inspiration and also some real practical insight and advice. We're looking to make the show a little bit more interactive. So if you're watching live, either on LinkedIn or on Instagram, please feel free to drop your questions or reflections and any other comments. And the crew behind the show will pick them up and feed them to us during our conversation. Well, speaking of our conversation, today we are delighted to welcome on the show Hana Taiji. She's the Director of Purpose at SixFive Sports Entertainment. Hana works at the intersection of, this is fascinating, at the intersection of football, investment, and community development in Canada. She helps guide Canadian Premier League clubs in using their operations to strengthen youth development and community well-being. Her career began at Kick4Life, a football club in Lesotho, an award-winning sport for development nonprofit using football to achieve health, education, and employment outcomes for vulnerable youth. That experience really inspired her belief in the power of sport to drive system change. Hana's extremely impressive. She's an alumni of the Executive MSc in Social Business Entrepreneurship here at the London School of Economics. And she's also a former Marshall Institute scholar. So she's really one from the home team, and we're really happy to have her on. Today, she continues her leadership as a committee member of Generation 2026, a pan-North American initiative advancing inclusive and safe access to sport ahead of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, which is crazy because that's just a few months away now. So without further ado, let's welcome Hana to Impact Careers.
Hi, Carlos. Hello, everyone.
How are you?
Thank you for having me. Great, thank you.
It's great to have you on the show.
Excited to be here. Thank you very much.
All right. Most important, hardest question first. What sport do you really excel at?
I mean, hardest question first, but also easiest for me and probably pretty boring. It is soccer, unfortunately. I played from a very young age, and I narrowed in pretty quickly. So it's still probably soccer. Football.
Football. I was going to say, come on, the London School of Economics here. Two North American, people with North American accents talking about soccer. Let's just call it football. It's so funny. So I for my sins, I'm American, but I live in Scotland, as you know, and I have two 14-year-old twins, and my son is really into sport, and he only plays sport, Hana, that I don't know the rules. I never played. He plays rugby. He plays cricket. He plays something called rounders, which I've never really quite been able to figure out. Right. Obviously, I know football, but he really the sports that he plays are all sports that I've never played. So I'm like the dad in watching him play, and I literally have no idea what's going on.
That's probably healthy. You'll not be that sideline parent who's screaming at him. You'll just be happy to watch. Although cricket's quite a long game to watch.
Oh my God. I mean, I just go for 30 minutes and I don't pay attention, and then nothing happens. I don't know. But it's fine. It's not meant for me. It's not meant for me. All right. Well, listen. So we're so lucky to have you on the show, particularly because, as said during your introduction, you are Marshall Institute and LSE through and through, and we always love welcoming alumni to the program and kind of passing on their journey. So to kind of get started, right? You began your career at Kick4Life in Lesotho, right? And Kick4Life, as noted, is a sport for development organization. I'd love to know what you learned about the power of sport to change lives.
I could probably fill the whole, a full hour with this question and this answer. What I would say is I learned the power of sport to change not only individual lives, but livelihoods. And in many
Mhm.
ways, life was set up to save lives. It started out as an organization to help provide HIV and AIDS treatment, testing and treatment for children.
Mhm.
And I think it evolved into an organization that provided a variety of programming from social enterprise, work opportunities to gender-based violence education. And so I really saw that beyond just providing an individual pursuit of excellence, it could truly provide, not only health and well-being for individuals and teams, but for entire communities, and it could provide opportunities and hope in ways that few other things could. So for me, once you learn that about the power of this sport in particular, it's really hard to unlearn that.
Yeah.
And where you go thereafter, you really feel like you have to integrate that into the sport. And if it ever falls short, even if you're working with just one team, you really feel like you have to drive that home through the operations of the club.
Yeah. No, and it's amazing, like I've been lucky enough to work with some sport for development organizations, a la, Kick4Life. And it is amazing also like the power of fun, like
Oh my
it's
goodness.
right? Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because that's such a hook, right? Like you think about,
Yes.
like a lot of times we talk about development, health outcomes and education outcomes
Yeah.
and, gender-based violence. And this is serious stuff. And it requires you to tackle those issues in a serious manner. But also sport is fun. Like we love sport. And so like that element of it is really important. And I'd love just a little bit of insight on that.
Oh my goodness. What a great question, because you're right. Play-based methodologies, I think you can apply those across any sport, but they're truly so simple and so
Yeah.
powerful. I think play is such an important thing for young people to develop their imaginations, their teamwork skills, various social skills. And I think what we found, and again, going back to the example of HIV and AIDS education, when we're teaching sexual and reproductive health through a sport that seemingly has nothing to do with that, if you're teaching maybe complex or hard topics and you're doing it through play and through teamwork, you lighten it, you provide levity, you provide joy. It takes down the scariness level in a way. And so we found that that was a very effective way for certain age groups in Lesotho to get kids engaged in subject matter that would otherwise be quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I'll just share one example. I really recognize the power of this when I myself decided to, at one of our events, test for HIV. And
Mhm.
I can tell you, I thought I knew my status, and I did, but I went into that tent terrified. And
Yeah.
when I walked out and everybody around me is playing, I found my results. It's all good, but I remember feeling like, oh my goodness, that really sunk in for me. How
Yeah.
powerful it was to have all this play happening around me, because I felt like there was a welcoming community. It really made me feel safe. And
Mhm.
I thought, I was an adult. What about these children going through this? So I think the club itself can provide a safe and supportive space, and play methodologies can be very effective in teaching subject matter that is not easy to teach in a classroom when you're just sitting there trying to focus.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that.
Mhm.
That's a great answer to that question. And I always, like we should be injecting more joy and more fun in a lot of these, in a lot of these kinds of activities, because to your point, it like more people they feel safer. And when people feel safer, they participate more and go on and on and on. And so, it's amazing what you do and how you do it. So speaking of what you do, so how does working in like sport for social impact differ between a nonprofit like Kick4Life and a private investment group like SixFive, which we'd love for you to tell us a little bit about as well?
Absolutely. I think there are probably many more ways they obviously differ than there seems to be similarities. But for me, one area I'd focus on is kind of maybe the level of power and influence that you work at. At least this isn't was in my experience.
Mhm.
At Kick4Life, we're a nonprofit. They were, very diverse in what they provided: three different legal entities, social enterprise, a football club, and health programming, a trust. And yet the direct service provision allowed you to be quite close to the I don't love this term, but the beneficiaries, the young people that you're there to serve.
Mhm.
And everybody is there with a common purpose and a means of achieving that purpose, the same set of values. There's cultural norms. All the infrastructure around it is set to serve that purpose. So whether you're delivering a hospitality business or a football club match, everybody knows what they're there for, and it's to help unleash the potential of these young people who otherwise maybe wouldn't have those opportunities. In a fund, we were set up to grow soccer in Canada. That was the initial intention. We're one of the few sort of larger countries that didn't have a domestic professional league. And so as an evergreen fund, we're there to grow the infrastructure, the ecosystem of professional soccer, from the grassroots up to professional levels. So seemingly very different purposes. But what I would say is the through line for me is that there was always this idea of this hidden potential of soccer in Canada. We need to grow the sport, but we need to do so responsibly. And so for me, that through line has always been there. How can we grow the sport, the infrastructures, the stadia, the fandom, the player pathways, but how can we do so in a way that's been better than before, so we make sure we mitigate any risk of harm in the process.
And has it been difficult? I'm hearing you kind of describe how it is, what your mission and your kind of the goal behind the organization and your kind of everyday work. I'd love to learn a little bit more about what it is that you do day to day, and then also like what are the challenges of integrating purpose or impact into the business model.
Sure. I think it evolves. Anytime you're in emerging organizations, it really evolves. So for me, the difference has been if you work at the fund level, we do own and operate two professional clubs as well as a modular stadium business. And so you're sort of having to spread yourself out and provide sometimes advisory support, sometimes actual project management support, and execution support where you can. And so the day-to-day looks quite different versus when you're maybe a general manager in a single organization, where you're on the ground working day to day with the people and your various stakeholders and your operations. So for me, the difference has been we've had two different clubs. One was there when I started. Another was actually just an idea in a way. And so getting to work on them, I think the interesting thing has been to make sure that we are all very clear on what we would call our purpose infrastructure, our purpose architecture, or the blueprint. So we're all very clear on what is our purpose, our mission, our vision, our values, etc. Because if we're not clear on that, then how we execute that in the strategy and the day-to-day operations of the organization is going to be unclear as well. And so doing that for each of those two clubs, that was the start. And making sure we're clear on that so that we can then execute or update our strategies, update our the different organizational structures, whether it's policies, whether it's how we do our ticketing, whether it's how we do our match day events. All of it flowed from making sure we're all clear on what is our highest level purpose. And if for me, with an existing club, it was making sure that we were clear that can we go further than just saying we're trying to provide professional playing opportunities for a select few? Can we use that influence to improve conditions in our local community, particularly for children and youth who may not otherwise have opportunities in sport or have health outcomes that we think we can affect in a positive way?
I'm interested in that a little bit, and I'd love for you to unpack it. Like when you have to take, like as someone who's been in the space for a long time, and actually we didn't even discuss this. My wife used to run a big sport for development. She designed a big sport for development program at Standard Chartered Bank many years ago, and so this is something that I've been around. But when you are dealing either with internal stakeholders at the company and at the fund, or at the government level or at the national level, like how do you explain to someone who doesn't really know? Obviously they know football, they know sport, but they don't really understand that connection that you've described so beautifully about kind of how sport can really be a catalyst for social impact and change. Like, how do you describe that to someone?
I think a lot of it depends on the group that you're talking to. Say we like to start, I learned this from my family business, branding from the inside out. You got to start with your your inside, your family, your staff, making sure that you sort of draw on their personal connections to the sport. A lot of people come with passion. A lot of people stay because of, passion, but a true belief in the power of sport. Now, a lot of that might come from the excitement of getting to watch a really, really momentous kind of massive event like a World Cup match. But for many, it started because they were kids who loved the sport and it changed them. It built character in them. It built life skills. It led to education opportunities, as an example. And so I think starting with how the sport impacted you as an individual, is a good way to connect, and then trying to shed light on how that might not be accessible to everyone in your
Yeah.
community or the people that you think you're trying to serve as fans, as players, as neighbors, as corporate partners, and saying, okay, well, then how can we effectively alleviate some of those barriers so that everybody gets the best of this sport? If it is a given that the sport is positive, then
Mhm.
everybody would be feeling it. But we know that's not the case. So how can we, through our match day experiences, through our player development pathways, through our community programming, how can we help alleviate some of those barriers and get more people access to the best of what this game can offer? Is kind of, I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
No, no, that makes a lot of sense. And what's amazing is like, do you find that I mean, obviously you have to tailor the approach a lot to football, but I think in theory, like you could, that you can do this with any sport. Is that correct? You think?
I think so. I think, yeah, I cannot be biased. I am biased
Yeah.
rather, but I have to say, sport has the power to change the world. I think where football has a bit of an advantage is simply that it is the world's most popular game. And so what has been really neat, even for me in my personal experience, is to travel the world
Yeah.
and get to see, from the grassroots level to the professional level, how people are just so ingrained in the game. And so, whereas, say it was rugby, say it was cricket, those games are loved and there's much to be learned through them. But because football is such a powerful force
Mhm.
culturally, and personally and economically around the world, there is something to it that lends itself to being a particularly effective tool for social change.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think the scale of football and the fact that it's like it's truly a universal language. Doesn't matter
Mm.
if you're in Japan, if you're in Brazil, if you're in Canada. Like people know the rules, people know how to play, people can get stuck in. And that is
Absolutely.
an advantage. As discussed, that for example, that cricket, even though a lot of many millions and billions of people play cricket, a lot of people that's not as universal, right? And I think that is that's an advantage. To your point, that's an advantage of football.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no shade on cricket. We're gonna start getting all these comments being like, "What do you
I
have
know.
against
I know.
cricket?" And I was like, "Nothing. I just know how to play it." So you're an alumni of LSC and a Marshall Scholar, right? I'd love to hear like how did the program, influence your career path and your perspective?
Oh my goodness. It was truly pivotal, both by design and by chance. And I say by chance because I started the program in the second half of 2020, and my life circumstances had changed. And so the way I engaged with the program and the way my career went after was also a little bit affected by that. Um, it was pivotal in the sense that I came in, having taken, I believe it was an 8-year gap between my undergrad and doing wanting to do a master's. And a lot of it was shaped by my work experience. I became very passionate about social enterprise. Kick4Life had done this. It was innovating in the area of social enterprise to help diversify its funding streams and become more sustainable so that the impact could scale and truly run into the future. The challenge was, I felt like I needed a little bit more robustness in how I understood social business in the context of not just Lesotho, but in Canada and wherever else I might be. So I came in wanting to understand it from the nonprofit perspective, and I left feeling truly strengthened in my belief that the football industry in the private side had a lot more to give to society, and it just needed some more intention. And so, in terms of being pivotal, it literally led to a transition for me moving from the nonprofit side to the private sector side, if you will, and helping try to grow an emerging league in Canada and helping try to grow emerging clubs in the professional men's side of the game.
Well, that's amazing to hear. It's always great, because I went to LSE as well, and it's always amazing to kind of hear from fellow alumni, like how LSE, and not just LSE in general, changed your life and your career and gave you new perspectives, but also like, how the Marshall Institute helped. And I think that like that network as well, like the people that you meet and the people that stick with you for life. I went to LSE, I don't want to say how many years ago, because I don't want to, I figured it out the other day and I was like, oh my God, I'm really old. But it is amazing. I still keep in touch with like good friends, like people that went to my wedding, people that I still do work with. You know what I mean? And it is. I think that network as well is so important.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I could go on and on about that, but I think they always say, education, and has always been the case for me. Half of it, at least, I think, is who you meet when you're there, and how you're challenged to expand your own ambition, and your own assumptions about how work is done because of their experiences. And of course, this program in particular brought in people from every possible organization, size, and type, and industry, all with a kind of purpose-driven value system, but with different ways of trying to come up solutions for these problems. And I have learned and continue to learn a lot from this network of people.
No, that's wonderful to hear. So I have two more questions for you before we let you go. One is kind of looking ahead, right? How do you see the role of sport evolving over the next decade, or the next couple of years, the next decade, in advancing inclusion, health, and kind of youth development?
Much depends on intention. For me, I think always it is. It's not a given that it will be positive. I think the
Hmm.
sport is booming right now. Whether it's the proliferation of kind of pop culture things like Ted Lasso that makes everybody understand a little bit the emotional power of the sport, to the fact that we're going to be hosting in North America the
Hmm.
Men's World Cup next year. That usually leads to a bit of a participation boom and some infrastructures and some investments. But for me, where there's exciting potential is in the growth of the women's game. Finally, it's an untapped market, sort of as businesses. It's an untapped market that is set to just grow exponentially. But I also think the way that women do sport, or the way that people will do the sport, could be different.
Hmm.
I better, and we'll continue to learn on both sides how to do the sport at the professional all the way down to the grassroots level in a healthy way. And I think for the next generation coming up, they also are going to shape it with their values and norms. So the way that they consume sport as fans and as consumers, they might do it differently, but they
Hmm.
also might play it differently. And the only thing I hope is that as we go more online, as things get as things grow, especially the commercialization in North America, I hope people still just get out there and play, do a little bit of free play. As we said in the beginning, play is really important. So just get out there and play, I think, is what I hope kids still continue to do.
So do I, 100%. And maybe, hopefully with a little bit of luck, that doesn't really change. So advice. As we know, a lot of people from, the people that listen and engage with our show are a lot of the times our students. A lot of them are LSE students, but not necessarily,
Mhm.
And I'd love to kind of hear, what one piece of advice would you have to anyone, no matter where they are kind of in their career trajectory, who are really interested in either pivoting or centering impact in their everyday work? Like, what kind of piece of advice would you have for them?
Hmm. I would say two things. Two things. One is be patient. I think I've been very fortunate to have roles come up for me because I saw
Mhm.
gaps. I and others saw gaps, and we decided to take a leap of faith and create roles that weren't there before, create programs that weren't there before.
Mhm.
And then I was very fortunate to step into those leadership positions, and then have to be able to figure out on the fly, how do you become a one-stop shop to figure out how to lead this when there's no certainty over whether this role and its mandate will actually work
Mhm.
as your intentions go. So sometimes you need to take that leap and be courageous and say,
Yeah.
I see a gap, make the business case for it, and present it. And then the other point I would say is that I have learned from every role I have been in, whether it was directly impact oriented or not. So I think understand that whether you're working in the private sector or not, whether your role is explicitly social impact oriented or not, there are a ton of hard skills and soft skills, primarily people skills, that you can learn that will translate into your next role.
Mhm.
So if you have that mindset and you want to apply a value system of impact and of treating people well, you can learn in every role how to prepare yourself for even more impact in the next one.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. And great pieces of like advice to leave all of our listeners with. So without further ado, thank you so much, Hana. It was an absolute pleasure to kind of have you on the show, and to just, like learn about you and your like amazing career. We wish you all of the very best in kind of the years to come. And hopefully you'll pop by the Marshall Institute at some point in the not too distant future.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for this.
Take care. Just wanted to again say thank you to Hana for sharing her journey with us, and to thank all of you for joining us today, either on LinkedIn or Instagram. If you haven't already, please leave a takeaway question in the comments. We'd love to kind of keep the conversation going long after the live stream. So before we wrap up, just a reminder that one, you can subscribe to our newsletter. Oh, look at that. I was just waiting for that. There you go. You can subscribe to our newsletter for events, research, and thought leadership. We'd also very much would encourage you and welcome you to explore all of our programs, including the Executive MSc in Social Business and Entrepreneurship. We'd love for you to take a look at our 100X Impact, our incubator and accelerator, which supports social ventures. And also, engage with the program. Find all of our previous episodes on the Marshall Institute webpage, but you can also catch up with us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Spotify, and really kind of Apple Podcasts, etc. Last but not least, we have one more episode in this first series, and that will take place on Tuesday, the 30th of September, so 2 weeks from today. And we'll be speaking to Richard Briers, who's the Director of Strategy and Implementation at Action for Children. So mark your calendars, please join us. It should be a great conversation with Richard. And so with that said, thank you very much for joining us. See you hopefully in 2 weeks, and all the best. Take care.